Hello, my fellow minor league nerds. Welcome to the latest episode of the Minor League Franchise History Series. This time, I will be talking about the history of the Montreal Royals to the current Syracuse Mets. Most of the research for this episode was done by my friend Donnie Wise, and I apologize up front for my poor French pronunciation. Our story of the Royals begins in 1928, but Montreal first hosted professional baseball in 1890 when the Montreal Canadiens played in the International Association for that one season. From 1897 to 1924, various teams played in the city using the name the Royals, the Canucks, and the Trios. One of those Royals teams played in the International League from 1912 to 1917. They were an average team, typically finishing around the 500 mark, with a third-place finish in 1916 being their best. In December 1917, that team moved to Syracuse to become the Stars, moving in the middle of the 1918 season to Hamilton, Ontario to become the Tigers, and then folding afterwards. Montreal wouldn't see another pro team until 1922, when another team using the name the Royals played in the Eastern Canadian League. They would win the 1923 championship, defeating the Ottawa Canadiens. For the second half of that season, the city actually had two teams, as the Trois-Rivières Trios relocated to the city. For the 1924 season, the league changed its name to the Quebec, Ontario, Vermont League, seeing the Royals finish 54-55. Following that season, the team and the entire league would fold. The story of the return of the Royals begins with George Tweedy Stallings, who was a mediocre player at best, only appearing in 7 major league games with Brooklyn and Philadelphia in the National League. But he found much more success as both a major league and a minor league manager. In 1914, he led the Boston Braves from last place on July 15th to the NL pennant and a World Series victory, earning him the nickname Miracle Man. He first arrived in Montreal in 1908 to broker the sale of a previous version of the Royals for owner Frank Farrell. At the time, the Royals played at Atwater Park, but Stallings was impressed by a property at the corner of Ontario and Delorme, which was home to the Mascots amateur baseball team. Gentleman George, as he was also known, had kept an eye on Montreal after the last International League team moved to Syracuse following the 1917 season. As baseball soared in popularity in the mid-1920s, he knew the time was ripe for the city to rejoin the International League when the struggling Jersey City Skeeters franchise became available in 1927. He returned to Montreal to seek financial backers, which he found in lawyer and politician Louis Antonis David and investment dealer and stockbroker Ernest J. Savard. Together, they would buy the Skeeters for $250,000 and relocate them to Montreal. Remembering the property at Ontario and Delorme from 20 years earlier, the club acquired it and set off to build a brand new ballpark to the tune of between $850,000 and $1.5 million. Originally called Delorme Downs, at times it was also known as Royal Stadium, Hector Racine Stadium after a team president, but it was usually just known as Delorme Stadium or Le Stade Delorme. Regardless of what it was called, it was hailed as the best minor league park in North America upon opening. Like many ballparks of the era, it was rectangular in shape, configuring itself to the city block. Right field was only 293 feet with a 40-foot wall and a scoreboard. Left field was 341 feet with a 24-foot wall, and center had only a 12-foot wall, but was a forbidding 441 feet from home plate. With finishing touches still being applied the night before, it opened on May 5, 1928, following a parade with a marching band. Montreal Mayor Camille Hauda, International League President John Conway Toole, and Major League Baseball's Commissioner Kennesaw Mountain Landis were all in attendance. George Stallings, who was 60 years old at the time, was the team's first manager and wore his usual fashionable suit, bow tie, and expensive hat in place of a team uniform. Going to the 6th, the Royals were down 3-0, but they caught fire with a rally that brought fans to their feet for a 7-4 victory in front of 20,000 fans. The next day, 12,000 were on hand, and there was a feeling that the team was back for good. In early June, with the Royals in second place, Stallings suffered a heart attack while on the road in Toronto. Coach Ed Holley, who played shortstop for the old International League Royals in 1910 and 1911, took over as manager while Stallings went home to Georgia to recuperate. Eventually, it was clear he would not return. When asked by a doctor if he knew why his heart was so bad, supposedly he replied, "Bases on balls, you son of a bitch! Bases on balls!" A little less than a year later, on May 13th, 1929, he died at the age of 61. The team faltered late in that first season, finishing in 5th place with an 84-84 record. For the next few years, the team was unimpressive, usually finishing in 3rd or 4th place. By 1931, with attendance dwindling, the owners sought new leadership. They hired Frank J. "Shag" Shaughnessy, a well-respected sports figure in Canada, as the new GM. He had moved to Montreal in 1912 to coach football at McGill University. As a former player at Notre Dame, he helped introduce the forward pass to Canadian football while at McGill. His baseball background included stints as a player for Washington and Philadelphia in the American League, as well as playing and managing in the minors. He also served as a scout for the Detroit Tigers for a time. Shaughnessy would name the team's second baseman, Doc Gartreux, the manager. The Depression had affected the team's ability to pay the bills. Enter Joseph Charles-Émile Trudeau, also known as Charlie, the father of future Canadian Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau and grandfather of current Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. He became the team's largest shareholder and its vice president. He also brought in Lieutenant Colonel Romeo Gouvreau, who made his money in the oil business. They both insisted their mutual friend, Hector Racine, be appointed president. Original owner Savard would step down and soon left to become the president and part owner of the Montreal Canadiens hockey team. The next few seasons would not see much success on the field, but it would usher improvements to the game that are still seen today. Shaughnessy would add lights to Delorme Stadium to help improve attendance during the week. During the 1932 league meetings, he convinced the owners to adopt a playoff structure similar to that in the NHL to help with the late-season lower attendance. The top 4 teams would advance to a playoff and compete for a Governor's Cup starting in 1933. The new postseason structure would be adopted by other minor leagues, including the 2 other AA circuits of the time, the American Association and the Pacific Coast League. The Shaughnessy Plan, as it was named, was credited with saving baseball from the decimation of the Depression. 1935 would see the team's greatest success to that point, though it did start on a down note. Charlie Trudeau would catch pneumonia and die just before the season began. Shaughnessy had assembled a solid team that was finally seeing success on the field after 8 seasons. They reached first place in late June and locked up the pennant the first Sunday in September. They were led by outfielder Jimmy Ripple, team captain Fresco Thompson, and pitchers Pete Appleton and Harry Smythe. The Royals would defeat the Buffalo Bisons in 6 games in the first round of the playoffs to go on and face the Syracuse Chiefs in the Governor's Cup Finals. They would take a 3-2 series lead home to Delorme Stadium, where they would lose Game 6, 3-2 in 10 innings, in front of 19,000 fans, the largest crowd since opening day 1928. With the wind apparently taken out of them over that Game 6 loss, they would lose Game 7, 2-1, and the Chiefs would go on to win their first Governor's Cup championship. The next few seasons would be disappointments. At the end of 1936, Shaughnessy would step down as manager, a position he held since 1934, as well as GM to become the president of the International League, a position he would hold until his retirement in 1960 at the age of 77. Before the start of the 1937 season, they would sign a working agreement with the Pittsburgh Pirates. The Pirates, though, did very little to support the Royals with top talent during this time. They finished the 1938 season with a dismal 69-84 record. Team president Hector Racine looked to talent-rich Brooklyn, who did not have a Double-A team at the time, and negotiated a working agreement that would last for 22 years and bring Montreal stability, success, and historic notoriety. The first move by Brooklyn was to select Burley Grimes as manager. He had been fired as manager of the big league club after 2 seasons, but the Dodgers wanted to keep him in the organization. This proved to be a disaster as he unloaded popular players and alienated fans, finishing in 7th place and resigning after that 1 season. Heading into 1940, a better agreement was needed, one in which the Dodgers held controlling ownership of the team and players. Next to the Cardinals and Yankees, the Dodgers owned the best minor league system. They also worked out a shared renovation cost of the stadium and managed to become the owners as well. This agreement resulted in Montreal winning their first Governor's Cup in 1941 after defeating the Newark Bears in 7. With that victory, they would advance to the Junior World Series and face the Columbus Redbirds of the American Association. Unfortunately, the Royals would fall in 6 to the St. Louis Cardinals farm team. The next 4 years were marred by the onset of World War II and a revolving door of players. 1945 saw their first-place finish since 1935, when they went 95-58. They topped the Baltimore Orioles in 7, but fell to the Newark Bears 4-3 in the Governor's Cup. After that loss, the golden years of the team were just beginning. As we all know, Branch Rickey of the Brooklyn Dodgers set out to break Major League Baseball's color barrier by signing Jackie Robinson. On October 23, 1945, it was announced that he would be assigned to the Royals for the 1946 season, signing his contract with the team that same day. The reaction in Montreal was generally positive, and he was welcomed in the city. Spring training 1946 in Sanford, Florida, was quite the opposite. Arrangements were made for him to stay at a private home of a local black family who lived near the ballpark because he couldn't stay at the team hotel with the other players. The Dodgers also signed John Wright, a pitcher from Pittsburgh's Homestead Grays, to be his roommate and keep him company since it seemed unlikely he would be immediately accepted by his teammates. Despite the struggles he faced from the public, other players, teammates, and his own manager, Jackie took it all in stride, even making positive comments about his acceptance in Florida, which were far from the truth. He would win the International League batting title with a .349 average and lead the league in walks and runs scored. He also produced 65 RBIs and 40 stolen bases, despite missing almost 30 games with leg injuries. The team was far from a one-man show, though. They had 6 players make the All-Star team, including Marvin Rackley, the only player on the team faster than Jackie, who ended the season with 65 stolen bases. Once again, they finished in first place with a 154 record, 18.5 games up on the Syracuse Chiefs. They would face the Newark Bears, who were led by catcher Yogi Berra in the first round. In Game 6, up 3-2, but trailing by 1 run in the ninth, the Royals would get an argued call by the umpire that turned into the game-tying home run. The resulting melee saw the Bears pitcher, manager, and 2 additional players ejected. The next batter, Tom Tatum, would hit a single, followed by catcher Herman Franks, who doubled to send Tatum racing for home. The throw would beat him, but umpire Artie Gore would call him safe, telling a furious Yogi Berra that he missed the tag, sending Montreal back to the Governor's Cup for a second year in a row. They would lose Game 1 of the finals to the Syracuse Chiefs, but then won 4 games in a row to win their second Governor's Cup and advance to the Junior World Series to face the Louisville Colonels of the American Association. The first 3 games would be played in Louisville, and their fans were relentless in their verbal abuse of Robinson. The Colonels restricted the number of tickets sold to black fans. Jackie would struggle in those games, getting only 1 hit. Royal shortstop Al Campanis would comment after Game 3, with his team down 2-1, "Wait till you see him in Montreal, where the fans are his friends." He certainly lived up to that comment, as in the next 3 games he went 7 for 14 and played solid defense, leading the Royals to victory for their first Junior World Series title. The next few years saw players like Roy Campanella, Don Newcomb, Duke Snider, Al Campanis, and Chuck Connors, who would have a 40-year acting career after both his baseball and NBA careers ended, as well as a young man who would become an icon in the Dodgers organization for several generations, Tommy Lasorda, all come through Montreal. They would win Governor's Cup championships in 1948, 1949, 1951, 1953, and 1958, as well as 2 more Junior World Series championships in 1948 and 1953. By 1954, the landscape of the International League and Major League Baseball was changing. Montreal was no longer the jewel of the organization, and the Dodgers had made it known that they were willing to sell the team for the right price. That same year, on February 14th, the Dodgers signed 19-year-old Roberto Clemente, offering him a $15,000 contract with a $10,000 signing bonus and a $5,000 league minimum salary. At the time, MLB's bonus rules were still in effect. They stipulated that when a team signed a player with a bonus in excess of $4,000, the team was required to keep the player on their 25-man active roster for 2 full seasons. Failure to do so resulted in the team losing the rights to the player's contract, making them eligible for the waiver wire. As Clemente's bonus was over $4,000, he was considered a bonus baby. However, the Dodgers decided against benching him for 2 years in the majors and decided to place him with the Royals, instructing manager Max Macon to use him sparingly to prevent him from being drafted through the Rule 5 draft. This trick did not work, as Pittsburgh Pirates scouts saw through the ruse, taking him in the Rule 5 draft on November 22nd, 1954. The Pirates' executive vice president and general manager at the time was Branch Rickey. Before the start of the 1958 season, the Dodgers had relocated to Los Angeles, and Montreal was no longer considered their primary AAA club, as they had 2 others, one in Spokane, Washington, and the other in St. Paul, Minnesota. For that same season, they hired Tommy Lasorda, who had previously pitched for the Royals from 1950 to 1955, and most recently for the Kansas City Athletics, to serve as a player coach for the Royals. By the end of the 1960 season, he was the franchise's winningest pitcher with a 107-57 record. On September 13, 1960, Dodgers president Walter O'Malley announced that due to weak attendance, they were ending their 22-year affiliation and the International League took over. A new affiliation was arranged with the Minnesota Twins. Efforts to keep the Royals in Montreal failed, and the league relocated them to Syracuse, New York on January 28, 1961, where they became the third incarnation of the Syracuse Chiefs after the original team had relocated to Miami before the 1956 season to become the Miami Marlins. The Eastern League added a team to the city for the 1956 season, but they moved to Allentown, Pennsylvania in the middle of the 1957 season. Besides the aforementioned players, others who played in Montreal for the Royals include Sam Jethro in 1948 and 1949, Johnny Podres in 1952, Hall of Famer Dick Williams in 1953 and 1956, Hall of Famer Don Drysdale in 1955, Tommy Davis and Hall of Famer Sparky Anderson both played there in 1958, and Joe Altobelli played there in 1960. In their 33 years of existence, the Royals won 7 Governor's Cups and 3 Junior World Series. They were victims of 6 no-hitters and saw their pitchers throw 4. The first by Hank Johnson on May 3, 1936. Lou Polly threw the second one on June 19, 1937. Don Newcomb threw one on August 15, 1948. And the last was thrown by Ken Lehman on August 18, 1955. Professional baseball would not return to Montreal until 1969, when the Montreal Expos were admitted into the National League. When the Chiefs returned to Syracuse in 1961, they moved into MacArthur Stadium, which opened in 1934 and would serve as their home until 1996. After getting burned twice in 2 years by private ownership, who moved their teams out of Syracuse, the new Chiefs adopted a community ownership model under the name Community Baseball Club of Central New York, Inc. A provision was added stating that no one person may hold more than 500 shares of the team. This was intended to make it more difficult for the club to be moved to another city like the previous 2. They played their first game on April 19, 1961, an 11-2 loss to the Columbus Jets in Columbus, Ohio. That first game was a sign of things to come. They finished in last place with a 56-98 record, but were a very popular draw, seeing 126,016 fans come out, which was 4th best in the league. In their first 6 seasons, the Chiefs had 4 different parent clubs. The Twins only lasted that first season. In 1962, they were shared by the Washington Senators and the New York Mets. From 1963 to 1966, they were affiliated with the Detroit Tigers and didn't see success until they joined up with the team from the Motor City. They made the postseason in their first 3 seasons, going as far as the Governor's Cup Finals in 1964, where they fell to the Rochester Red Wings. Stability and much greater success came to Syracuse after they signed an affiliation agreement with the New York Yankees starting in the 1967 season, which would last until 1977. They would make the postseason in 6 of those 11 seasons, winning 3 Governor's Cups in 1969, 1970, and 1976, as well as 1 Junior World Series in 1970, which was the first to be played since 1962, when they defeated the Omaha Royals 4-2. They would lose back-to-back Governor's Cups in 1974 and 1975. Bobby Cox would actually manage the team from 1973 to 1976. Hordes of future major leaguers made their way through Syracuse up to this point, but only 2 went on to be big stars for the Yankees. They were Thurman Munson, who played 28 games there in 1969 before being called up to the Yankees that season. The other was Ron Guidry, appearing in 42 games in 1975 and another 22 in 1976. Arguably, during this time, they produced more stars for the Baltimore Orioles than the Yankees, as Rick Dempsey, who played there in 1973, Tippy Martinez in 1974 and 1975, and Scott McGregor, who played there in 1974, 1975, and 1976, all contributed to Baltimore's 1979 and 1983 World Series runs. In 1969, MacArthur Stadium was badly damaged by fire. After a game against the Rochester Red Wings on May 14th, a pair of local teens broke into the ballpark and used a flare in an attempt to burn their way into the team safe. They ended up setting off a massive blaze that consumed the main entrance, the press box, the team's offices, a concession stand, and 1,800 seats in the center portion of the stadium grandstand, while the portions of seating that overlooked left and right field were saved. A month later, a slab of concrete fell from the upper deck, crashing into the third base grandstand, quarantining another 2,000 seats. The Chiefs were forced to play their home games in Oneonta and Auburn, New York, while repairs were being made. They were able to return to MacArthur Stadium a month later on June 14th to a now wide-open gap behind home plate where the grandstand had been. They wanted to play their home games at Rochester's Silver Stadium, but this was rejected by the Red Wings. In 1978, the Chiefs began a 31-year affiliation with the Toronto Blue Jays. On the field, it was not a successful period. They only made the postseason 5 times, with first-place finishes in 1985 and 1989, and second-place finishes in 1979, 1994, and 1998. They made it to the Governor's Cup 3 times, losing in 1979 to the Columbus Clippers and twice to the Richmond Braves in 1989 and 1994. By the mid-90s, MacArthur Stadium was in terrible shape and needed to be replaced. In April 1997, the team opened the brand new $29.3 million PNC Stadium, now known as NBT Bank Stadium, using the same AstroTurf that was used in Toronto. To coincide with the new ballpark, the team changed its name to the Sky Chiefs. They had been using native imagery since their inception and wanted to distance themselves from criticism by switching to an aviation theme. The new name may not have been popular with fans, but the new stadium, on the other hand, was a huge success, as their attendance jumped from 300,405 in 1996 to 400,804 in 1997, reaching an all-time peak of 446,025 in 1999. They would revert to the Chiefs name for the 2007 season, but would not adopt the old logos. Instead, they decided to pay tribute to another form of transportation, the train. This was to honor the city's history as a manufacturing hub that shipped goods all over the country via rail. Though they weren't the most successful team on the field during their time with the Blue Jays, many future major leaguers passed through Syracuse during this time. Some of them include 7-time All-Star Dave Stieb in 1979, 5-time All-Star Tony Fernandez from 1981 to 1984, the 1987 AL MVP George Bell in 1982 and 1983, 4-time All-Star Jimmy Key in 1983, the crime dog Fred McGriff from 1984 to 1986, two-time All-Star closer Tom Henke in 1985, the 1990 and 1991 American League home run champion Cecil Fielder in 1986, two-time World Series champion David Wells from 1986 to 1988, three-time Silver Slugger Carlos Delgado from 1991 to 1995, 1996 AL Cy Young winner Pat Henkin in 1991 and 1992, two-time All-Star Shawn Green in 1994, the 2005 NL Cy Young winner Chris Carpenter in 1997, Hall of Famer Roy Halladay in 1997, 1998, and 2000, as well as three-time All-Star center fielder Vernon Wells in 1999 to 2001. Danny Ainge played for the team from 1978 to 1980. He would play 211 games for Toronto before embarking on a 15-year career in the NBA. He, along with Chuck Connors, who played for the Royals from 1948 to 1950, are two of the 13 athletes to play in both MLB and the NBA. Following the 2008 season, the Chiefs' long affiliation with Toronto ended as they signed on to become an affiliate of the Washington Nationals. They also changed their playing surface to natural grass. Their 10 seasons with the Nationals were also not that great. They only made the playoffs once in 2014, being swept by the Pawtucket Red Sox in 3. In 2010, they celebrated their 50th season of being a community-owned team by wearing 1961 throwback jerseys for every Thursday home game. The following season, 2011, they would wear 1976 throwback jerseys to celebrate the 35th anniversary of the last Governor's Cup championship. The Chiefs started having financial troubles during the mid-2000s. After 36 straight years of turning a profit, they posted a loss in 2006. The red ink mounted over the next several years until they were nearly $1 million in debt and on the verge of bankruptcy in 2013. In September of that year, Team GM John Simone and any family members associated with the team were fired. It was the first time since 1970 that someone not named Simone was the GM of the team. On October 11, 2017, it was announced that the New York Mets would purchase the team, a sale which was approved by the team's stockholders in early 2018, ending nearly 6 decades of community ownership. This led to the rare occurrence where a team was owned and operated by one MLB club, while serving as an affiliate for another. The 2000 Queens Kings, the subject of episode 11 of my Throwback Thursday Cap the Day series, was another. Future major leaguers who played for the Chiefs during their time with the Nationals include Bryce Harper in 2012, Steven Strasburg in 2010, as well as rehab starts in 2011 and 2015, Trey Turner in 2015, 2016, and 2017, Lucas Giolito in 2016, and Victor Robles in 2018. On October 6, 2018, the Chiefs era ended, and it was announced that the team would be rebranded as the Syracuse Mets, adopting the blue, orange, and white color scheme of their parent club. This incarnation of the Syracuse Chiefs won 3 Governor's Cups and 1 Junior World Series. They were no-hit 10 times, including twice in less than 2 months in 1990, and 3 years in a row in 2016, 2017, and 2018, with the one in 2017 being thrown by former team member Lucas Giolito. Their pitching has thrown 7 no-hitters, 6 of which were 7-inning affairs. They had one 7-inning perfect game thrown by Stan Bonson on June 9, 1967. The team's last game was a 2-0 victory over the Buffalo Bisons on September 3, 2018. The Mets started their inaugural 2019 season with one of the most experienced rosters in the minor leagues, when 21 of 25 players had previous major league experience. One notable player was former Heisman Trophy winning quarterback Tim Tebow during his quest to become a Major League Baseball player following his time in the NFL. In their brief history, the Syracuse Mets have not made the playoffs, finishing 2nd, 5th, and back-to-back 9th place finishes, while also having 4 different managers in each season since beginning in 2019. In addition to sending many players to the major leagues, the Syracuse Chiefs have also sent a good number of announcers to the majors as well. While attending Syracuse University in 1962, Marv Albert served as the voice of the team. Hank Greenwald, who twice worked for the San Francisco Giants, as well as the Yankees and the Oakland Athletics, was also there in 1962. Greg Papa, currently the radio play-by-play man for the San Francisco 49ers, who also worked for the Indiana Pacers, the Golden State Warriors, Oakland Athletics, San Antonio Spurs, Oakland Raiders, and San Francisco Giants, announced for the team in 1982 and 1983. Sean McDonough, who is currently employed by ESPN and the Boston Red Sox radio network, WEEI, was in Syracuse from 1982 to 1984. Current Cincinnati Bengals and University of Cincinnati Bearcats football and men's basketball announcer Dan Horde was in Syracuse from 1985 to 1995. Current play-by-play man for the Los Angeles Angels, Matt Vasgersian, was there in 1995. White Sox play-by-play, as well as Fox Sports announcer Jason Benetti, was there from 2009 to 2014, as was current Baltimore Orioles announcer Kevin Brown from 2010 to 2017. Screenwriter, director, producer, and actor Ken Levine worked for the Chiefs in 1988. He would also announce for the Orioles, the Mariners, the Padres, and the Dodgers. He wrote the Simpsons episode Dancin' Homer, basing it and the Springfield Isotopes on his experience in Syracuse. Well, my fellow minor league nerds, that's going to do it for this episode of the minor league franchise history. I know it was a long one, and I thank you for sticking with me. Once again, I want to thank my friend Donnie Wise for doing the bulk of the research for this episode. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel if you want to receive notification every time a new episode is uploaded. Thank you again, and until next time, never stop supporting minor league baseball, and never stop learning about minor league baseball history.